Implementation of phase 1 for broadband connectivity in South Africa is now well underway. However, industry experts say despite grand ICT plans and promises, delays and a failure to deliver have set back economic progress in South Africa by as much as a decade. For more on the rollout of broadband installation across the country, we are joined now by the Deputy Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. Thanks for joining us, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Now, South Africa is clearly moving in the right direction in terms of making broadband more affordable and accessible.
Yes.
Now, the pace at which this is happening has been criticized. Would you say that this critique is fair?
Well, I suppose, people will see things differently. But when we joined the department, we found that they formulated the policy, South Africa Connect policy, which clearly identifies issues that are important if we're to focus on the digital economic side of things. And also, of course, there were delays from a digital migration point of view. But when it comes to broadband rollout, there have been studies which looked at the gaps. Where are gaps in terms of of broadband? And I must say, the process was slow, but at the moment we have a high percentage of people who are connected through mobiles, maybe more than 90% now.
Now, when you say the process was slow, why exactly did it take long to implement? Is it technical problems, or was it a thing of it's new to us and we're trying to find sustainable ways and also efficient ways to roll out the broadband?
I think if you look at the ICT sector in South Africa, it has grown, mainly driven by the private sector. And as you know, the private sector tends to focus in strategic areas for them, which will be urban settings, because that's where big businesses are. Yes. And the big question for South Africa is what we always live with, these remote rural areas. In the past, they were called the homelands areas. Yes. They tend to be forgotten, and yet the majority of people are there. Hence, the government strategy is to say, how do we roll out broadband to those deserving districts? And those are the poorest of the poor.
Now, the availability of broadband is giving us greater access to global networks and even new job opportunities. Now, what is the department doing to ensure that we are ready for these new jobs in the future?
Well, the process has been to focus really on school connectivity as an entry point to the village. And now when we go to an area, we don't only connect the school, but also we look at the health setting, justice for these dockets and the police, So it's almost like saying, what are frontline service organizations that government has to reach people through, and those that are getting connected? And I must say the process is moving at a faster rate now compared to the years of policy formulation, which were much slower than now. I think we have picked up.
Now, speaking of connecting schools, for example, I think a practical challenge would be at school, the child is connected. They're either using iPads within the school and they've got access to Wi-Fi, etc. But at home, it's a different situation. They don't have access to computers, for example, and the networks. So how are you going to make sure that what is happening at school almost, is happening at home as well, to ensure that there's consistency?
Well, the NDP is clear in terms of broadband rollout, 100% by 2030. But in the interim, if you look at the school labs that our private sector are setting up in rural schools, the thinking is that if a child has access to internet for a number of hours during the day, it could make up from the deficits that might be on the family sides. But remember, there's a need for training. People have access to mobile phones, but they use them as though it's a fixed line. Yes. Hence, what we're doing in remote rural areas, we encourage some of the companies that are very strong in training people in how to use these ICT gadgets to go back and spend as much time as possible in empowering people so that they are able to use the computers, the mobiles, beyond the basics, but being able to access internet and...
Deputy Minister, we're running out of time, but I quickly want to ask you this. It's still Youth Month. Let's look at youth inclusion in the ICT sector. What are some of the measures, just briefly, that you as a department have put in place to make sure that the youth is included in this program?
Well, basically we start with careers because there are huge opportunities in the ICT sector. But if you look at our education, it doesn't give the marks that they require to be able to take engineering, maths and science subjects. So we are focusing on career expose so that these companies can actually show them what opportunities are there.
There's so much to discuss about this, and we'll definitely have you again. Thank you so much for joining us.